Good morning, Word of Life. It's a perfect song for baptism today, huh? So if you don't know, I am Brittny, and this is Sean. I'm Sean, this is Brittny, Condon. Sorry.
That's all right. So we want to thank you all for coming out today. I know it's super cold, and thank you to all my family and friends that came out to support us, and Sean's family, and we all know that you guys are our family too. So thank you so much for, bearing the weather. It's not fun out there. So we're sharing our testimonies with you, and yes, thank you. So what we want to emphasize is it's not where we've been or our past, but it's where we are today. So that's what we want you to take away today is how God has worked in our lives and has changed us into completely different people. So again, we're really looking forward to this. So let's start off with just a little, introduction is we've been married. This June will be about 6 years. August will be 9 years that we've been together, so a long time. I got married at 19, Sean was 21, so I wouldn't recommend that for people, just so you know, getting married that young. But God has been very gracious with us. So, so we've got, let's see, so we're going to talk a little bit about our childhoods. So there should be a little slide that shows my cute little self. So I grew up in Coal Valley, and just a little background on our, faith, how I grew up. So we went to church. We went to Presbyterian Church in Coal Valley, had great, wonderful memories there, loved it. And I joined ASA softball when I was in third grade. So tournaments were on weekends, so we never went to church anymore. It was very rare for us. So I was always taught who God was, but I never really trusted him or made him a priority in my life. So growing up, my parents got separated. They got a divorce, and Mom moved to Moline, my dad to Rock Island. So it was we were always back and forth, and that was always a struggle for my sister and I. But I would say I always had a good idea of the path I wanted to be on. There were a few times I strayed away and kind of did some drugs and drank a little bit more, but I made the Moline softball team as a freshman. So doing that, I realized that's where my passion was, and that's where I wanted my life to go. So I knew the party scene wasn't really for me. So I was thankful to have that opportunity to make the right decisions in my life. And I always made pretty good decisions, but it was more because I wanted to make people like me, to impress my parents, make other parents like me. It wasn't necessarily for God.
So, I was pretty cute, but not as cute as Brittny. I grew up in a family where we didn't go to church. My biological parents are together, but they weren't always. I've got 4 younger brothers and 2 younger sisters, all from different dads and moms, and I'll draw you guys a diagram later if you guys want to see how that worked out. But a lot of stepdads were fairly abusive, and I ended up taking care of my brothers and sisters a lot, and kind of shaped me into a young dad, I guess. Teenage years, I ended up getting into a lot of drinking and drugs, and slept with a lot of girls, and I ended up graduating with a 1.7 GPA. Right before I graduated, I had to serve 298 detentions. I sometimes went on Fridays. I sometimes went on Mondays. 4-day weekends sound better than 2-day weekends, really. But I had a lot of anger problems, and I really just wanted to rebel against absolutely everything, and even if I had absolutely no reason for it. So how we met, I was seeing one of Brittny's friends at the time, and Brittny and I were friends, and one thing led to another, and I stopped dating the one girl, and I started talking to Brittny.
I mean, look how handsome this guy is. And right here, too. This guy's still handsome, right? Oh, yeah.
That's like a solid 70 pounds ago. There's like a whole nother person added on. So, and as you can see, I was madly in love with this guy. I mean,
Never felt that way about anybody before. I was head over heels for him. I would pretty much do anything for this guy. I knew I was going to marry him. I was like, this is the guy. So we all know where it says in the Bible not to have sex before marriage, right? So, but I was going to marry him, right? So I kind of twisted the words a little bit. I can have sex with the guy I'm going to marry because he's technically will be my husband. So unfortunately, that's not how things work. So if you look at 2 Peter 3 through 16, it says, God writes, the same way in all his letters, speaking in them of these matters. His letters contain some things that are hard to understand, which ignorant and unstable people distort, as they do the other scriptures, to their own destruction. So I manipulated his word to make it work for me, right? But that's so dangerous because it even says to our own destruction. As you see, our story is going to get very destructive. And, I should have been trusting in what he said because he tells us these things for a reason because he's trying to protect us. Yet we think we know better, right? So, this is definitely something I learned the hard way. So, Sean and I, we started dating in August of 2010, and he had actually graduated, and I was in my junior year. So, our relationship was great, and he ended up moving into an apartment. He moved out of his parents' house and was super excited. And Sean actually didn't drink or anything when I dated him, which I thought was amazing because I was like, I don't either, and that was a huge value that I held. But he started hanging out with these people. He started drinking and partying all the time, and I'm like, this doesn't seem good. And all these red flags kept hitting, and I kept seeing all these things, but I didn't want to be that crazy girlfriend, so I never brought anything up. So it wasn't until he actually joined the Navy without even telling me. He just goes, yep, I'm leaving this date. I'm like, oh, thanks for asking. And he left, and he actually had one of his roommates' friends actually knew my sister. They went to school together. And it was one time I was over, and she's like, I know you. And I'm like, And so then we realized, okay, so she actually called me one day, and she's like, I have something to tell you about Sean. And this is after he left for boot camp. And I'm like, this can't be good. Because I've had all these red flags and all these things. I'm like, this can't be good. Well, she ended up telling me that Sean had cheated on me, that he had another relationship. And I was so devastated. I remember just falling to my knees, crying in the shower. I don't know why I answered my phone when I was in the shower, but I did. And my whole world was just flipped upside down because here's the guy that I gave everything to, the guy I was going to marry, the guy that I loved unconditionally, that I trusted, and it completely just, flipped my world upside down. And I remember going to sleep, woke up the next day, I'm like, wow, that was the worst nightmare I've ever had. And then I'm like, oh no, that was real. So it all came back rushing again that this is reality, right? And that day I had 3 softball games. The next day was my high school graduation. So I couldn't enjoy any of those things. And I think He knew that Sean should have been at boot camp when I found out, because otherwise I would have went to his house and done some things I probably wasn't proud of. So very thankful that God was watching out on that.
And I had originally decided to join the Navy just to kind of escape. I wanted to clean myself up, and I figured that if I had left, that it was going to give me a chance to do something better with my life. And I actually left for boot camp still high. So it was an awful start. And boot camp was, it sucked. wasn't fun. But then getting the letters back and forth, so you could get letters all week, but you can't send out a letter till Sunday. So I would get letters and stuff, and then I find out that Brittny knows, and now I'm trying to explain myself through a letter. Well, then I got to wait half of a week and then another week to reply. And it just turned what already was a bad experience into just like a living hell.
Mm-hmm. And I thought that torture would be really nice. I'm like, I don't even have to really do it. So the Navy's there to do it for me. And so I actually got a hold of one of his roommates because I wanted to find out more information. I was like, hey. So he told me all this stuff, and I'm like, oh, so this isn't good. But I was able to then test Sean, right? Because I knew all this information, and he didn't know I knew it. So I would ask him questions whenever, after he got out of boot camp, he was down in Florida, And so I was able to ask him all these things to see if he would actually be honest with me. And he would actually tell me more of the answer than I actually knew. So I was like, okay, I feel like the boot camps really kicked his butt enough. I didn't have to. So I feel like we were kind of gaining some trust back, and we actually decided to keep dating.
Boot camp changed me in a lot of ways. It straightened me out for the most part. I was fairly polite before I went in, so the whole yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am wasn't really a big deal. A lot of parents are told that their kids will be different when they come back, and my mom said I was pretty much the same. And I think in a lot of ways I believe that I could change who I was on my own, and that I finally conquered all of the things that I was running from in my life, that I had finally, I don't know, broken away from addictions and the different habits that I had formed over the years. And I ended up getting stationed in Virginia. I ended up going on deployment directly out of boot camp. So I went overseas, and Brittny went to ISU to play softball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just so you know, this slide is where we're at, so I might have messed up, so I'm sorry back there. So I was playing softball at Illinois State, and so every summer I'd go out to see him. During the holidays, he'd come home to see me on leave, and so we'd probably go about 6 months without seeing each other. So the first summer we went out there, I went out to see him. You know, our relationship was great. We loved each other, and we're like, hey, let's do this thing called marriage, right? So we drove home. My mom was going to be in town, so I was like, this is perfect. I remember calling my dad, and I was like, Dad, great news, Sean proposed. He's like, that's amazing. You have time to plan. I'm like, do you want to hear our plan? He's like, yeah. I'm like, what are you doing next Friday at 8 o'clock? And he was not very happy. Both of my parents tried to, gear me in the right direction and say, maybe this isn't the best idea. As I said, I was 19, a little naive. As 2 Corinthians chapter 6, 14, it says, do not be yoked together with unbelievers. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with the darkness? So my mom even talked to me like, hey, Sean's not a believer. You guys shouldn't be getting married. But I was like, but I love him. And I thought my love could change him. So I remember telling him at one point that, you'll never go a day where you're unloved, because I was just unconditionally loving him. And I thought that's what it took, right? And I thought by example, I could show him that, by being in prayer and reading the Bible, that Sean will change because he can see what's happening, which I didn't actually do very well. So that didn't even help. But so we got married anyways.
And I didn't know that verse, and even if I did, I probably wouldn't have paid attention to it.
No.
All I knew is that I wanted Brittny by my side, and since joining the Navy, I'd remained faithful to her.
Mm-hmm. So I went back to school after we got married that summer, and had spent another year. But again, some of these odd signs were kind of showing, the same ones that I kind of had the first time that Sean and I weren't, or that he was kind of being unfaithful. And I was like, you aren't talking to me as much. You're saying you're sleeping. Like, I don't know, just things weren't really, we weren't connecting still. So when Sean came home that summer, I actually decided I'm going to leave softball, which I wasn't very happy at that institution and that program, so it made it easier. But I do believe God knew that in order for Sean and I to make our marriage work, I wasn't supposed to be in Illinois and he was in Virginia. We needed to be together. So we came home and we had an awesome reception. We had carnival themes. We got in the bounce house. We had lemonade. It was a really good time, a lot of fun. And my grandfather actually renewed our vows, so that was very special for me. I ended up moving to Virginia with him. So the next picture is a picture of our apartment. And, oh, gosh, it was beautiful. We made so many great friends out there. We met a lot of people. And the crepe myrtles were in – oh, wait, no, just kidding. This is us moving. So chopped off my hair. And then, so the next one's of our apartment. So very nice. We loved living there. So with moving out, that took a lot of courage, and especially with our, past situation. So I was always not really trusting him. I always was looking for him to slip up somehow. I was always checking things, seeing, what he was really up to. So one time I was looking at his iPad, and I was looking at emails. And I used to always look at incoming just to see if anything was active. Well, this day I looked at outgoing, and I found a lot of things that I did not want to find. And he had been messaging girls and while I was away. So when I had this gut feeling something was happening, I should have listened to it. But yeah, so he was also messaging girls and was with them. And but when I found this out, again, I was devastated. I fell down to my knees thinking, well, I moved out here. All my friends told me never to get back with him. The family that knew told me never to get back with him. So I don't want to hear I told you so. I don't want to be divorced at 21. So I remember praying, and I'm just like, God, now is the time for you to give me a Christian man and someone that likes country music. Seriously, I did pray that, because I remember I loved country at the time. Sean hated it, and I could never listen to it. So I was like, this is a sign. All right, God. And I even went to work after that, after I found out, and they're like, what's wrong? Because I'm usually pretty excited and happy. So I was definitely not that day. They're like, what's wrong? Nothing. Second time, what's wrong? I'm like, bawling. And I'm just like, I don't want to talk about it. Someone cornered me in the back, and she's like, you need to tell me what's going on. So I actually moved in with her for a week. So I moved out so that way I could kind of clear my head, figure out what's going on. I told Sean, like, hey, we need to go to counseling. And Sean, he agreed. And we went one time. And I thought by him even saying that he was willing to go, that made enough of an effort to say, hey, I'm willing to change. But since we didn't continue going, there was no change. But, yeah. And the other thing, too, is I was going to church on and off depending on my work schedule. And God has always just laid it on my heart never to force Sean to go, because then it wouldn't be genuine, and he'd be more likely to not even listen when we would go. So
I just want to backtrack for a second. If God is upset at any of us for any reason, it's because of country music. So, but Brittny had asked me to go to church several times, and over the years I had other girlfriends that had asked me to go to church, and I would go with, and I would just kind of like sit there and just wait for it to be over. And as a matter of fact, I came here, I don't know, probably like 6 years ago or so, maybe 4. And I met Pastor Tanner, and comes up to me all smiling and stuff, and I was like, this is awful. I cannot wait to get away from this guy in this place. And then I think I came back like the next year to pick up Brittny.
Yeah, he would pick me up. He wouldn't actually come to service.
Yeah.
He just came to pick me up.
After service.
Yeah, exactly.
I was hoping there wasn't going to be people here at all, but that's...
Tanner was waiting for you.
And then I saw him again. He was like, it's good to see you again. I'm like, I don't know. Did I meet you the last time? Or? And he's like, yeah, remember? And I was like, oh. But I didn't want to be in church. It didn't interest me. I didn't want anything to do with it. And in the meantime, I'm still trying to figure out where I'm going in my life, what I'm trying to go through, and I still couldn't figure out why I had this necessity to screw up the things around me, why I force myself into situations that are inherently bad for me. So I was fine for about another year or so, and I kind of found myself doing the same things, and I feel like I was looking for a way to fill a void inside of myself. And again, I thought that I got this, I can control it, it's fine.
Yeah, so I ended up moving back home because, right, one session of counseling means everything's good. So, yeah, moved back home, and it was about like every year and a half. Like, we'd been great for about a year and a half, and everything was good, and then all of a sudden something happened. So I remember he always is in a group chat with his friends, so his phone's going off constantly. Well, one night it went off at like 1 or 2 in the morning or something, and I don't know why. It was on vibrate. Like, I don't ever wake up to anything, but for some reason I woke up and I'm like, that's kind of odd. So I'm gonna go ahead and look to see what it is. Well, he ended up getting on like a messaging app and was messaging this girl. And I was just like, nope, this is it. I'm done. I called my friend that night and went over to her house. And when I woke him up too. I was not very happy. And I left, packed my bags, and I left. And so I'm very thankful for my friend that was able to open her doors to me during these hard times. And I told Sean that I'm done with this. I want a divorce. I'm like, we're moving home in 6 months, and you've got 6 months to prove it to me that you're willing to be in this and you're changing, because I can't handle this anymore. And it was even a couple days later, my mom, her now husband, and his kids came up to visit us. So we had to fake it the whole time that we were okay. And I'm like, all right. So, we were sociable. And then after that, I kind of did move back home just because, you go where you're comfortable, even if it's not healthy for you. And also my dog was there, Miss Anna. So I couldn't leave her there without me. But yeah. And so this next picture, I ended up hanging out with a lot of people from work, and they were great people. I love them so much. They were wonderful friends, but they weren't Christians whatsoever. So we would go to bars constantly. We would, having a few drinks here and there, but, we would definitely abuse it. And I started wanting these worldly desires. I started wanting to feel wanted. So I would want guys to hit on me at the bars. Even though I'm still married, even though I still love Sean, I wanted different relationships. I was pursuing the wrong things because that's what I thought would make me feel better. And thankfully, no guys hit on me. Woo. So, kept me safe.
And despite my actions, I did love Brittny. I did want to be with her. And I started trying to figure out, I'm like, all right, so what am I going to do now? What have I done in the past that hasn't worked? What can I try that's new? So Brittny had been going to church on and off, and I had said, oh, maybe I go to church with you. Maybe, I could learn some of those good Christian values and figure something out.
Yeah. And you said so we could have something to talk about.
Exactly.
Because we weren't really talking much.
And so I went on a couple Sundays, and the one thing that I never did, all of those other times I'd been into a church, was I listened. And because I would just sit there and just zone off, or I'd play on my phone or whatever.
And wait till you were watching the clock the whole time.
Yeah. But that first Sunday that I went, I listened, and he said Matthew 5:28. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. I'm like, oh man. I was like, I guess I never really thought about it like that. And but I felt like he was speaking directly to me. And at that point, we started going more, and I listened to that verse over and over again, and I realized that, when I stopped doing drugs, I just stopped doing them. When I stopped, drinking excessively, I just stopped drinking. When I stopped cheating, I stopped cheating, but then I always held on to pornography. And I never really thought about it as like a gateway thing where, it was like normal growing up. Other teenage boys were looking at it, and it seems like it's, a normal thing to do in the world. And I had never realized how it pushed me, how, looking at images then drives you to send messages, and those messages drive you to maybe go see a person. And for the first time in my entire life, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my chest, that I'd finally figured out what I wasn't letting go of, that wasn't allowing me to change. And during that entire time that all this is happening and we're in the process of moving and stuff, I just assumed Brittny was going to leave me the whole time. And I was basically just waiting for it. And I understood that because of what I did, that it was okay. that it was all right for her to move on, and I wanted what was the best for Brittny. I wasn't really in self-pity about it, but I understood what I did and how she deserved better.
Yeah. So moving home was something I wasn't looking forward to because I had two decisions to make, right? Or one decision, but two different outcomes. So either I can move home and move in with Sean to make things work, or I can move home and move in with my dad. But if I would have moved back home with my dad, Sean and I could never have a relationship thereafter. Because my dad loves his little baby girl. So because I would have had to tell him something, right? I would have had to tell him a reason why I'm not moving home with Sean. And I think anything at that point would have definitely caused Sean and I to get a divorce. So on the way home, and I never told anyone at home about what was going on in Virginia because they already knew about the first time. So if they heard about all these other times, all they're going to do, all I felt they were going to do is judge and tell me, like, well, I told you not to get back with him. Cheaters never change, everything that you hear like that. So I was kind of alone in that aspect with moving home. So I confided in my mom. I ended up calling her, and I told her everything that happened. And I remember Google says it's 16 hours to get from Virginia to here. That is a lie, because it's taken us up to 24 hours before. So anywhere between there, let's go with 18 or 20 hours. I was on the phone with my mom the whole entire time, asking her, like, what do I do?
The first trip, though, I made it in 15, so.
Yeah. I don't know if I feel comfortable with that. And if I drove, maybe that had something to do with the longer hours. I don't know. One time I did spin us completely 360 in the interstate. So it was snowing. So that's a different story, but yeah. So he doesn't let me drive all the time. So the biggest thing was, I was praying and asking anybody I could of what am I supposed to do. So I would ask my friends, I would ask people that were Christians, that weren't Christians, and I think everyone that gave me an answer truly believed with all their hearts that this is what would be the best. And a lot of people told me to leave. Now, every time I talked to a Christian or someone at church, they wouldn't really give me an answer. And I remember even talking to our pastor, because I was like, hey, pastor, this is going on. Can you counsel us? So really all I wanted him to say was, like, you can leave. That's really all I was looking for. I wasn't looking to help our relationship anymore. I just wanted someone to tell me, yep, you have every single right, you need to divorce him. From someone that was actually, a believer, but he never said that. And so he's not giving me what I was looking for. So there was even a time where I went to church. It was a prayer night, and I was just praying and praying and praying about what am I supposed to do. And every time it would come up empty, right? But I got this peaceful feeling that you're supposed to stay. And I'm just like, oh, okay. And then I remember going to church or going to work right after that, talking with my friends, and they're like, no, you need to leave him. So I'm like, wow, this is two opposite ends of the spectrum, depending on who I'm talking to. So it was like one of those that the little devil's on your shoulder, a little angel. And I really felt like I was in the middle of this tug of war, and I was the rope. So the thing is being obedient. So this is what really came into play was Proverbs 3:5-6. Is trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. And I had heard of that, my whole life, but it never really applied to me until I was put in this situation where I literally couldn't trust anybody. I couldn't even trust myself because I don't know what decision to make right now. Everything in the world is telling me to leave him, but this gut-wrenching feeling kept telling me to stay. And it was even because, and I knew, this is why I went to that pastor, telling him it's okay, is I didn't want to leave him because he cheated. It's because I had all those worldly desires I was telling you about. That's really the reason I wanted to leave, is because I wanted to pursue other relationships, hoping that they'd be better, right? And I think that's what the real reason I wanted to leave is because I had these new desires that I wanted to fulfill, but they weren't of God. So God kept telling me, like, nope, I put you together for a reason. That's what he kept speaking over and over and over again. And I remember, too, when I was dating Sean, I was head over heels for him. I remember saying I would do anything if Sean were able to get to know God. If he were to know Jesus, I would do anything. But I thought anything was like die in a car accident. That'd be fast, right? No big deal. He'd be at my bedside. I was a huge hopeless romantic too, by the way. So I'd be like laying at the bedside and dying, and Sean would be holding my hand, and then he's like, yeah, yep, I accept Jesus. That's what I thought, when I was first dating him. But I didn't know it was going to go through years of living hell. That's what I prayed that day, and I didn't know what I was signing up for. But that was the other hard part for me was, well, how long do I have to wait? So God was very gracious to us, and, I didn't have to wait 60 years. I didn't have to wait longer and keep going through this over and over again. And, so we moved home, and I had decided, I told Sean, I will move home with you, but that doesn't mean that we're, I was kind of postponing, just saying, like, I'll move in with you, we'll work on it, but we'll see where it goes. Because I wasn't willing to give up then, and I was still wanting to work on us, because I still did love Sean, despite everything that had happened. So I remember I was like, all right, well, let's go to Word of Life Church, because, that's where I was going before I had moved, and I wanted Sean to feel comfortable, so we were like, well, let's try this out. If we need to, try different places, we will, and we've never left.
We're still looking.
Yeah.
It's been a slow process.
Yeah. So Sean started getting really involved. He was, we got involved with this Connect group for young marriages, which really helped a lot, and he was help volunteering all the time. Yeah. Light the night, yo. Woo, first one we went to. Helping out, we had the youth group. We eventually got involved in that. But when we were going to our first Connect group, I remember we went out on a date, because that's what they say is you guys still need to go on dates even though you're married. So we went out, we went to Chili's, and, I'm just like super happy. I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. Because Sean is, making leaps and bounds, and I'm like, so do you believe? He's like, no. I'm like, what? I'm like, what do you mean no? And, there my heart was crushed again. But, yeah.
So when we were out in Virginia, I was going to church on Wednesdays. I'd go for a short teaching and prayer. I went to a Saturday night service. I went to 2 Sunday services every single week until we
Saturday
left.
and all the Sundays were all the same.
It was the same thing. The Saturday one was it was somebody else speaking it, but it was the same message. And but I just kept going. I couldn't get enough. And then when we got back, I tried to get into absolutely everything that I could, and I just couldn't get enough. And for some reason, I would think about it. I was like, I don't know. I don't get it. My brain just doesn't process it. And people talk about testing the waters and stuff, and I wasn't necessarily testing the waters. I was just slowly walking into the water, just getting deeper and deeper. And eventually, I was just completely submerged, and to the point now where I don't know. I can't fathom thinking any differently than God is real. Mm-hmm. My brain can't wrap itself around, the lies that I believed when I was younger. So I was here for, probably about a year.
Well, I think this June will be 3 years that we've been home. So we've been going for almost 3 years now.
So that whole first year, just getting involved in stuff, and then helping out with the youth group, and then I finally got baptized, and that was pretty cool. I finally made that commitment to verbally announce to the rest of the world that I do, in fact, believe that Jesus is my Lord and Savior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So, and I think even though God has made miracles in our marriage, every single marriage is going to have something, that you guys argue about, but we've learned how to argue. So that's a good thing, especially with all these Connect groups and just doing these different marriage retreats. We've learned a lot of great tools on how to make our marriage stronger. That doesn't mean we don't fight, right? But we always we find a way to negotiate usually, and we learn how to do it more healthy, and we learn to tell each other what we need, not just what we want, or what I think Sean wants, but it's something he needs. So we've really learned to communicate properly. And God is at the center of our marriage, and it never had been before. And, I know people have talked about the diagram that's a triangle. You've got you and your spouse on the bottom and God at the top. Well, if you're both working towards God, you're both getting closer together. And that's what's happening with Sean and I. I remember, I left this summer to go up to Minnesota, and I remember someone was like, well, are you sure that's a good idea? And I'm like, well, I didn't even really think about it being a bad idea. But I was like, well, Sean and I have been apart for like 6 months. And did that work out good last time? Good question. But I never even thought of it because God has got us. If Jesus is in Sean's heart and Sean has a desire to go do something that's wrong, Jesus is going to convict him, right? And if God is working in him, then I don't have to worry because God's got that. I don't have to worry about that anymore. And God's working on me too. That's why I never even thought of it being a bad thing, is because that's not us anymore, right? We are two completely different people. We have completely different relationship. And it's not that happened overnight, right? We've been married for almost 6 years. This happened through the 3 years, I believe, or something. So we've had 3 years to, go through everything. And I think, not even that like the cheating is going to bother us in the future, because we've given that up. That's gone. That's not us anymore. And I'm so thankful for that, because, you've heard that, God will use everything and put it together for good for those who believe. And I have seen that in our marriage, because we have gone through so much garbage, but God has brought us together even stronger. And I think most people in this situation, they wouldn't be together anymore. But because, I believed and trusted that God could make us something, he can make us whole and not just pieces, then he was able to work miracles.
And I understand now that this entire journey for me, I tried to control everything on my own, and I tried to work it out myself, and I understand now that I needed God to help me through those worldly desires. I understand now that we all have a God-shaped hole inside of us, and we try to fill that hole with anything that we can find. We fill it with drugs, sex, alcohol, gossip. We fill it with, material things. And it's funny because the only thing that goes in that God-shaped hole is God. The things that I used to argue against, I now believe wholeheartedly. And the world will try to tell you who you are based on your previous actions. Mm-hmm. You cheat, people will tell you that, that person's a cheater forever. If you lie to somebody, you're a liar. You do some drugs, you're a junkie. You have a couple drinks, you're an alcoholic. The world will tell you all of these things about yourself, but God tells you something completely different. In 2 Corinthians 3:18, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come.
Yep.
And it's one thing to say that to somebody when they call you out on something that you used to do, but then it's something completely different when you believe it in your heart, because now you don't have to have that burden with you. People can say whatever they want about what I used to do, but I know that that's not who I am now. Mm-hmm. The old has passed away. I look at the me that did those things, and he doesn't exist. That person's dead. I don't know him. Mm-hmm. The person that Brittny was before, she doesn't know her. The person you were when you were doing drugs, it's not here anymore. So I'm going to ask Joel to come up, and if you're getting baptized this morning, if you can head out into the hall. And if our story made an impact on you today, or if you're tired of feeling hopeless, lost, broken, and hurt, I want to lead you into a prayer this morning. Because if you confess with your mouth that the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, you will be saved. So with all eyes closed, with heads bowed, if you need raised from the dead this morning, if you need salvation, please raise your hand. No one can see you, and I want you to pray this prayer with me and receive Jesus Christ. God, I recognized that I have not lived my life for you up until now. I've been living for myself, and that is wrong. I need you in my life. I want you in my life. I acknowledge the completed work of your Son, Jesus Christ, in giving me his life. I long to receive the forgiveness you have made freely available to me through this sacrifice. Come into my life now. Take up residence in my heart to be my King, my Lord, and my Savior. From this day forward, I will no longer be controlled by sin or the desire to please myself, but I will follow you all the days of my life. Those days are in your hands. And I ask this in Jesus' precious name. Amen. So if any of you have any questions later, or if you haven't met us, feel free to stop us. We'll be hanging out for a little bit, and let's dunk some people, huh?
You guys have got to do better than that. That was amazing, wasn't it? That was amazing.